Have you ever stood at a crossroads, your heart pounding, your mind racing, paralyzed by the sheer weight of what-ifs? Perhaps it was the moment before stepping onto a stage to speak, the instant before clicking send on a life-changing email, or the quiet, agonizing seconds before initiating a conversation you knew would be difficult. In those moments, a voice whispers from the depths of your mind, a voice of doubt, of caution, of fear. It tells you to retreat, to play it safe, to remain in the comfortable harbor of the known. We have all heard that voice. We have all felt that icy grip of apprehension. Our modern world, in many ways, glorifies a very specific type of courage. We see it in movies, the fearless hero charging into battle, the daredevil defying death. We are led to believe that courage is a spectacular, explosive force, a quality bestowed upon a select few who are simply born without fear. But what if this definition is not only wrong, but is actively preventing us from living our best lives? What if true courage is not the absence of fear, but something quieter, deeper, and far more accessible to every single one of us? The Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome grappled with this very question over 2 millennia ago. Men like Seneca, a wealthy advisor who faced exile and a death sentence, Epictetus, a man who endured the brutality of slavery to become a revered teacher, and Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who shouldered the weight of a crumbling empire, plagued by war and pestilence. These were not men who lived in ivory towers, they lived in the thick of human struggle. And from the crucible of their experiences, they forged a philosophy of resilience, a practical guide to living a good life amidst chaos. For the Stoics, courage was not a fleeting emotion or a heroic impulse. It was one of the 4 cardinal virtues, an essential pillar of a well-lived life, alongside wisdom, justice, and temperance. It was a skill to be cultivated, a muscle to be trained through daily practice. As Seneca wrote, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. This single line reframes everything. It suggests that courage is not just for the battlefield, it is for the quiet, unseen battles we fight every single day. The courage to get out of bed when facing depression. The courage to be honest when a lie would be easier. The courage to persist when failure seems certain. In our journey today, we will strip away the Hollywood veneer and rediscover the profound, practical, and life-altering wisdom of Stoic courage. We will learn that it is not about eradicating fear, but about understanding it, acknowledging it, and then choosing to act based on reason and principle, not on the whims of our anxieties. We will explore how to focus our courage on what we can control, how to prepare our minds for adversity, and how to live with an integrity that makes us unshakable from within. This is more than a philosophical exploration. It is an invitation to begin your own training. To stop waiting for fear to disappear and to start building a strength that is greater than your fear. So, find a quiet space, allow your mind to settle, and let us begin our exploration of the Stoic art of fearless living. Section 1, Redefining Courage, the Virtue Beyond Heroics. When we hear the word courage, our minds are immediately flooded with images of valor and heroism. The soldier on the front lines, the firefighter rushing into a burning building, the activist standing defiant against oppression. These are undoubtedly acts of courage, and they deserve our utmost respect. However, to confine courage to these extraordinary moments is to miss its most vital and daily application. This narrow, sensationalized view makes courage feel like a distant ideal, a trait for heroes, not for ordinary people navigating the complexities of modern life. We look at our own lives, our office jobs, our family responsibilities, our internal anxieties, and think, where is the grand stage for my courage? The Stoics would argue that the stage is everywhere. It is in every choice, every moment, every breath. To understand Stoic courage, we must first place it within its proper context, the 4 cardinal virtues. For philosophers like Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, a good life, a life of eudaimonia or human flourishing, was a life lived in accordance with virtue. These virtues were not separate ideals but an interconnected whole, a four-sided pillar upon which a stable and meaningful life could be built. They are wisdom, Sophia, the ability to distinguish between good, bad, and indifferent. It is the master virtue, the knowledge of what to do and what not to do. Justice, Dike assign the virtue of treating others with fairness and respect, understanding our duties to the human community. Temperance, Sophr assign the practice of self-control, moderation, and discipline over our desires and appetites. Courage, Andrea the strength to face fear, hardship and pain, and to do what is right, even when it is difficult. Notice the placement. Courage is not a standalone trait. It is a component of a virtuous character. The Stoics understood that courage without wisdom is simply recklessness. A person who rushes into danger without understanding the risks or the purpose is not courageous, they are foolish. Courage without justice can become tyranny or cruelty. A soldier who fights bravely for an unjust cause is not a virtuous hero. And courage without temperance, without self-control, is just a momentary, uncontrolled outburst, not a sustained strength. This is the first and most crucial redefinition. Stoic courage is not the absence of fear, but the application of reason in the face of fear. It is the conscious, deliberate choice to act righteously despite the internal or external pressures telling us to do otherwise. Seneca, in his Letters from a Stoic, makes this distinction with piercing clarity. He speaks of those who, out of sheer ignorance or rage, seem fearless. He argues this is not courage, but a mentally defective state. True courage, he asserts, is prepared, thoughtful, and principled. It knows what it fears, calculates the cost, and then proceeds because virtue demands it. Let's bring this down to a practical, modern level. Imagine you are in a meeting at work. A popular but unethical proposal is being discussed. Everyone seems to be on board, nodding in agreement. You, however, see the long-term damage it could cause to your clients and the company's integrity. Fear arises. Fear of being ostracized. Fear of being seen as a troublemaker. Fear of jeopardizing your career. The modern, heroic view of courage might suggest a dramatic, table-thumping speech, a fiery denunciation of the plan. But Stoic courage would look different. It would begin with wisdom, analyzing the situation clearly. What are the facts? What is the right thing to do? Then, it would be guided by justice, a sense of duty to the clients and the company's true values. It would be executed with temperance, speaking up calmly, rationally, and respectfully, not with anger or self-righteousness. And all of this would be powered by courage, the very act of speaking up despite the fear of personal consequences. This is moral courage. It is the courage to be the lone voice of reason in a chorus of conformity. It is the courage to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. This form of courage is required of us far more often than physical bravery. It is required when we admit a mistake instead of hiding it. It is required when we set a boundary with a loved one, knowing it may cause temporary conflict. It is required when we choose to forgive someone, not because they deserve it, but because holding on to resentment is poisoning our own soul. This redefinition is empowering because it transforms courage from a rare genetic lottery ticket into a universal human capacity. It's not about what you feel, it's about what you do. Fear is a natural, physiological response. The Stoics would never advocate for its suppression. They were realists. Fear, they would say, is an indifferent. It is neither good nor bad. It is simply a signal from our nervous system. The virtue of courage lies not in silencing that signal, but in hearing it and then letting reason, not instinct, make the final decision. So, the first step in our training is to let go of the myth of the fearless hero. Instead, embrace the image of the Stoic sage, a person who feels fear just like anyone else, but who has trained their mind to look past the fear and focus on their principles. They have practiced, day in and day out, asking themselves not, "Am I scared?" but, "What is the right thing to do?" And in answering that second question, they find the strength to act. This is the foundation upon which we will build. Section 2, the dichotomy of courage, facing what you can and cannot control. One of the most powerful and practical tools in the entire Stoic arsenal is the concept known as the dichotomy of control. It is a mental model so simple, yet so profound, that once you truly grasp it, it can radically alter your perception of every challenge you face. Epictetus, in the very first line of his Enchiridion, or handbook, lays it out with stark simplicity: some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. What is up to us? Our thoughts, our judgments, our choices, our actions. In short, our inner world. What is not up to us? Everything else. Our bodies, our health, our reputation, our wealth, what other people think of us, the weather, the economy, life, and death. In short, the external world. At first glance, this might seem pessimistic, a philosophy of resignation. But it is the exact opposite. It is a blueprint for liberation. The Stoics argued that the vast majority of human suffering, our anxiety, our anger, our despair, stems from a fundamental confusion between these two categories. We desperately try to control what we cannot, while utterly neglecting what we can. We worry endlessly about whether someone will like us, uncontrollable, while failing to act in a likable, virtuous manner, controllable. We rage against a traffic jam, uncontrollable, instead of practicing patience and calm, controllable. So, how does this central principle relate to courage? The dichotomy of control provides a precise map for where to apply our courage. It reveals that courage is not a single, blunt instrument but a dual-bladed tool, requiring two distinct, yet complementary, applications. The courage of acceptance, the strength to face with tranquility and grace the things that are not up to us. The courage of action, the strength to act with conviction and integrity on the things that are up to us. Let's dissect these two forms of courage, for they are the twin pillars of a Stoic's fearless life. The courage of acceptance is perhaps the more difficult of the two. It goes against every instinct of our modern, control-obsessed culture. We are taught to fight, to overcome, to never give up. But the Stoics would ask, what if you are fighting against reality itself? That is a battle you can never win. There is no courage in trying to hold back the tide or command the sun to set. There is only futility and exhaustion. True courage, in this context, is the strength to accept what you cannot change. This is not passive resignation. It is an active, mindful, and incredibly brave embrace of reality. Think of the diagnosis of a chronic illness. You cannot control the disease itself. No amount of willpower or anger can make the cells in your body behave differently. The courageous act here is not to deny reality, but to accept it. To say, this is my situation now. I did not choose it, but it is here. This acceptance is the necessary first step. From that place of clear-eyed acceptance, you can then pivot to the second form of courage. The courage of action comes into play once you have accepted what is outside your control. Now, you must turn your full attention to what is within your control. With a chronic illness, you can control your response. You can choose to learn everything you can about the condition. You can choose to adhere to your treatment plan with discipline. You can choose your attitude, to live with kindness and gratitude for the abilities you still possess, rather than with bitterness for those you have lost. You can choose to be a source of strength for your family, rather than a burden of despair. This is where your power lies. This is the arena for your courage. Let us consider a historical example that beautifully illustrates this duality, the story of James Stockdale, a U.S. Navy vice admiral and pilot who was shot down during the Vietnam War. He was held as a prisoner of war in the infamous Hanoi Hilton for over 7 years. He was repeatedly tortured, starved, and held in solitary confinement for years. In this horrific situation, what was outside of his control? Everything. His capture, his imprisonment, the actions of his torturers, the length of his sentence, whether he would ever see his family again. A lesser person would have been broken by this utter lack of external agency. But Stockdale had a secret weapon. He had studied the Stoics, particularly Epictetus. He understood the dichotomy of control not as a theory, but as a survival tool. He practiced the courage of acceptance. He accepted the reality of his situation. He was a prisoner. He would be tortured. He might die here. He did not waste a single ounce of his precious mental energy on wishing things were different. From this foundation of acceptance, he unleashed the courage of action. He focused exclusively on what he could control, his own character. He resolved that he would not betray his country. He would not allow his captors to break his spirit. He would uphold his duty as the senior officer, creating a covert communication system and a code of conduct for his fellow prisoners to help them resist. He controlled his thoughts, his principles, his integrity. His captors could break his body, but they could not touch his mind unless he allowed them to. He once said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which, in retrospect, I would not trade." This is the so-called Stockdale paradox, the unflinching acceptance of the brutal facts of reality, combined with an unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end. It is the dichotomy of courage in its purest form. You do not need to be a prisoner of war to practice this. You can apply it today. Are you facing a difficult boss? You cannot control their personality or their demands. That is external. Accept it. But you can control your own professionalism, your work ethic, the quality of your responses, and your decision to seek other employment. That is internal. Act on it. Are you dealing with the pain of a breakup? You cannot control the other person's feelings or their decision to leave. Accept it. But you can control how you choose to heal. You can control your commitment to self-care, your decision not to indulge in self-pity, and your focus on rebuilding a beautiful life for yourself. Act on it. Practical exercise: take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write down a challenge you are currently facing. Now, list all the aspects of this situation that are not up to you. Be brutally honest. On the right side, list all the aspects that are up to you. Your judgments, your actions, your attitude. Look at the two lists. Where have you been spending most of your energy? The path to peace and strength lies in consciously shifting your focus from the left column to the right. Have the courage to let go of the left, and have the courage to take ownership of the right. This is the daily practice of a Stoic warrior. Section 3, Premeditatio Malorum, the courage to face the worst. There is a common misconception in our modern culture of relentless positivity that to think about negative outcomes is to invite them into our lives. We are told to think positive, to visualize only success, to banish any thought of failure from our minds, as if the mere act of contemplating misfortune is a form of self-sabotage. The Stoics would have found this notion not only naive but dangerous. They believed that a mind unprepared for reality is a mind destined for turmoil. This is where one of their most counterintuitive yet powerful practices comes into play, premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils, or negative visualization. This is not an exercise in morbid pessimism or anxiety-mongering. It is a strategic, psychological training regimen designed to build mental and emotional resilience. It is, in essence, an act of courage, the courage to look unflinchingly at the potential hardships of life in order to strip them of their power to surprise and shock us. Seneca, in a letter to his friend Lucilius, advises, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster." This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events. His logic is simple and psychologically sound. The primary source of our suffering in a crisis is not just the event itself, but the shock of its arrival. The feeling of, "this shouldn't be happening," adds a layer of righteous indignation and panic on top of the actual pain. Premeditatio malorum systematically removes that element of surprise. By mentally rehearsing potential adversities, losing your job, falling ill, being betrayed by a friend, even your own mortality, you are, in a sense, inoculating yourself against the emotional devastation of these events. Let's break down how this practice builds courage. First, it reduces fear of the unknown. Much of our anxiety is not about a specific, concrete event, but about a vague, shadowy monster of what if. By forcing ourselves to visualize the worst-case scenario in detail, we drag that monster out of the shadows and into the light of reason. What would actually happen if I lost my job? I would lose my income. I would have to update my resume. I would need to reach out to my network. I might have to cut back on expenses for a while. It would be difficult, yes. But would it be the end of the world? By breaking it down into a series of practical problems to be solved, the terrifying, amorphous fear of losing my job transforms into a manageable, albeit challenging, situation. The unknown becomes known, and therefore, less frightening. Second, it cultivates gratitude for the present. The Stoic practice is not just to imagine losing things, but to do so while reminding yourself that you have not lost them yet. As you visualize your life without your health, you feel a renewed, visceral gratitude for the simple act of breathing without pain. As you contemplate the loss of a loved one, you are reminded to treat them with kindness and presence today. This practice injects a sense of urgency and appreciation into the present moment. It is a powerful antidote to the habit of taking our blessings for granted. As William Irvine, a modern Stoic author, puts it, it allows us to enjoy the things we have without clinging to them. Third, and most importantly for our discussion of courage, it prepares you to endure. Courage is not about never falling, it's about how you get back up. By repeatedly rehearsing hardship in your mind, you are training your psychological endurance muscles. You are teaching yourself that you have the inner resources to cope. You have survived difficulties before, and you can survive them again. The mind, much like the body, adapts to stress. By exposing it to controlled, simulated doses of adversity, you make it tougher, more resilient, and less prone to panic when real adversity strikes. You are, as Seneca would say, rehearsing for fortune's blows. A guided exercise in premeditatio malorum. Let's walk through a practical application. Find a quiet moment, perhaps in the morning before your day begins. Choose a fear, select something you value deeply and fear losing. It could be your job, a relationship, your financial stability, or your health. For this exercise, let's choose your job. Visualize the loss, close your eyes and vividly imagine that you have lost your job. Don't just think the thought, feel it. Imagine your boss calling you into their office. Hear the words. Feel the shock, the anger, the fear rising in your chest. Imagine walking out of the building for the last time, carrying a box with your personal belongings. Analyze the aftermath. Now, shift from the emotional impact to a rational analysis. What is the next logical step? You would go home. You would tell your family. What happens tomorrow? You would start assessing your finances. You would update your LinkedIn profile. You would make a list of contacts to call. You would start searching for new opportunities. Walk through the process step by step. See it not as an insurmountable catastrophe, but as a new chapter, a problem to be solved. Recognize your resilience. As you visualize these steps, remind yourself of your own strengths. You are resourceful. You are intelligent. You have skills. You have a network. You have overcome challenges before. Acknowledge that while it would be painful and difficult, it would not be the end. You would survive. You would adapt. You would find a way forward. Return to the present with gratitude. Finally, open your eyes. Take a deep breath. And feel the profound sense of relief and gratitude that you do have your job today. You have the opportunity to work, to contribute, to learn. Carry this renewed sense of appreciation with you throughout your day. This practice is not about dwelling on the negative. It is a strategic tool for mental fortification. By having the courage to face the worst in your imagination, you build the courage to handle whatever life throws at you in reality. You stop being a fragile creature, terrified of the unexpected, and become a resilient Stoic, prepared for anything. You transform fear from a paralyzing force into a practical preparation tool. Section 4. the courage of authenticity, living with integrity. In a world saturated with social media, peer pressure, and the relentless pursuit of external validation, perhaps one of the most challenging and courageous acts is simply to be yourself. To live a life that is an honest reflection of your own values and principles, rather than a performance designed to win the approval of others. This is the courage of authenticity, the strength to live with integrity. For the Stoics, this was not a peripheral concern, it was central to the idea of a good life. A life of virtue is, by definition, a life of integrity, where your inner character and your outer actions are in perfect alignment. The Stoic sage is not concerned with popularity contests. Their self-worth is not derived from likes, followers, or the fleeting opinions of the crowd. It is derived from an internal source, the knowledge that they are living in accordance with reason and nature. This requires immense courage, because the pressure to conform is a powerful and insidious force. It begins in childhood, on the playground, where being different can lead to ostracism. It continues in the workplace, where dissenting from the group consensus can be career-limiting. It permeates our social lives, where we often present a curated, idealized version of ourselves to fit in. We fear judgment. We fear ridicule. We fear being misunderstood. And so, we wear masks. We sand down our rough edges. We silence the unique voice within us, and in doing so, we betray ourselves. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the world, constantly wrestled with this in his journal, Meditations. He reminded himself again and again to be indifferent to the opinions of others and to focus only on his own conduct. He wrote, "How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only to what he does himself, to make it just and holy." This is a call to action for authenticity. Stop wasting your precious, finite energy trying to manage other people's perceptions of you, an impossible and exhausting task that lies outside your control. Instead, redirect that energy inward. Focus on your own actions. Make them just. Make them virtuous. The courage of authenticity manifests in several key ways. First, it is the courage to know yourself. You cannot live in alignment with your values if you do not know what they are. This requires introspection, self-examination, and the bravery to be honest with yourself about your strengths, your weaknesses, your desires, and your fears. Socrates, a major influence on the Stoics, famously declared that, "the unexamined life is not worth living." Journaling, as Marcus Aurelius practiced, is a powerful tool for this. It is a space to have an honest conversation with yourself, to untangle your thoughts, and to clarify your principles away from the noise of the world. Second, it is the courage to speak your truth. This does not mean being tactless or aggressive. As we discussed, courage must be tempered by wisdom and justice. It means expressing your thoughts and beliefs honestly and respectfully, even when they are unpopular. It is the courage of the employee who points out a flaw in a plan, the friend who gently confronts another about self-destructive behavior, or the citizen who speaks out against injustice. Each time you silence yourself out of fear of disapproval, you diminish yourself. Each time you speak your principled truth, you strengthen your character. Third, it is the courage to live your truth. This is where the proverbial rubber meets the road. It is not enough to know your values, you must embody them. This means making choices, both large and small, that are consistent with your principles, even when it is inconvenient or difficult. It might mean turning down a lucrative job that conflicts with your ethics. It might mean ending a relationship that is no longer aligned with your vision for your life. It might mean pursuing a passion that others deem impractical. Living with integrity means that your daily actions are the evidence of your beliefs. Consider the ultimate example of this principle, Socrates himself. When he was put on trial in Athens for corrupting the youth and impiety, he was given a choice. He could have recanted his philosophical teachings, apologized, and lived out his days in quiet obscurity. This was the easy, safe path of conformity. Or, he could stand by his principles, by his life's work of questioning and seeking truth, even if it meant death. He chose the latter. In his famous Apology, he was not apologetic at all. He defiantly defended his life's mission, stating that he would rather die than stop practicing philosophy. He faced his death sentence with a calm and courage that has echoed through the centuries. He chose integrity over life itself. This is an extreme example, but the principle applies to us all. We are faced with smaller, similar choices every day. Do I laugh at a joke I find offensive just to fit in? Do I stay silent when I witness something wrong? Do I pursue a path that looks good on paper but leaves my soul feeling empty? Journaling prompts for cultivating authenticity. To begin building this courage, use these prompts for your own reflection. What are the 3 most important values that I want to guide my life? E.g., honesty, compassion, growth, freedom. In what recent situation did I act in a way that was not aligned with my values? Why? What fear was holding me back? What is one small action I can take today to live more authentically, to better align my actions with my stated values? Whose opinion do I fear the most? Why do I give that person or group so much power over my inner state? The path of authenticity is not the easiest path. You may face misunderstanding. You may lose friends who were only friends with the mask you wore. You may feel lonely at times. But the reward is immeasurable, a deep and abiding sense of inner peace and self-respect that no external validation can ever provide. It is the quiet, unshakable strength that comes from knowing that, no matter what the world thinks, you are living a life that is true. That is a fortress no one can breach. Section 5, Courage in Action, From Physical Peril to Everyday Battles. Having redefined courage as a virtue of reason and integrity, we must now explore its application in the real world. Courage is not an abstract concept to be admired from afar, it is a practical skill that must be deployed in the varied arenas of human experience. While we often associate courage with moments of extreme physical danger, the Stoics would urge us to recognize and practice courage in the far more common, yet equally significant, battles of daily life. Courage is a spectrum. On one end, we have physical courage, the willingness to face bodily harm or death in the pursuit of a noble goal. This is the courage of the soldier, the firefighter, the police officer. It is the courage demonstrated by figures like Mucius Scaevola, a legendary Roman youth who, after being captured during an attempt to assassinate an enemy king, thrust his right hand into a fire to show his indifference to pain and death, a display of resolve so shocking it secured a peace treaty. This form of courage is visceral, immediate, and awe-inspiring. It requires a mastery over the body's primal survival instincts. The Stoics admired this, but they knew it was not the only, or even the most important, form of courage. On the other end of the spectrum, and far more relevant to most of our lives, is the vast terrain of moral and emotional courage. This is the courage required to navigate the complexities of our relationships, our careers, and our own inner landscapes. These are the everyday battles, the small, often unseen moments that test our character and forge our resilience over time. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, spends less time contemplating glorious battles and more time coaching himself on how to endure the annoyances of daily court life. He writes, "Begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet with the meddling, the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful, the envious, the unsocial." His battle was not against barbarians at the gate, but against his own impulse to react with anger and frustration to the flawed human beings around him. This is a battle we all fight. Let's break down some of these everyday arenas where Stoic courage is required. The courage to be vulnerable. Our culture often mistakes Stoicism for being emotionless, for building an impenetrable wall around one's heart. This is a gross misinterpretation. While Stoicism teaches self-control, it does not advocate for suppression. True courage involves the willingness to be vulnerable in appropriate ways. This includes the courage to apologize. It takes immense strength to look someone in the eye and say, "I was wrong. I am sorry." The ego screams against it. It wants to defend, to justify, to blame. To overcome that internal resistance for the sake of justice and reconciliation is a profound act of courage. The courage to ask for help. pride and fear often prevent us from admitting we are struggling. We fear being seen as weak or incompetent. But the truly courageous person has the wisdom to recognize their own limits and the humility to seek assistance. It is a sign of strength, not weakness. The courage to love someone is to open yourself up to the possibility of immense pain and loss. It is the ultimate act of vulnerability. The Stoics, particularly Seneca, wrote extensively on love and friendship, seeing it as essential to a good life, but also recognizing the courage it takes to invest your heart in something you cannot ultimately control. The courage to face failure. We live in a success-obsessed world where failure is often seen as a final verdict on our worth. This creates a paralyzing fear of trying anything new or difficult. Stoic courage reframes failure entirely. For a Stoic, the only true failure is a failure of character. External outcomes, whether a business succeeds, a project is praised, or a competition is won, are ultimately indifferent. The courageous act is to try your best, to act with virtue, regardless of the outcome. The courage to start over, to lose everything, a career, a relationship, home, and to find the strength to get up and rebuild, brick by brick, is one of the most powerful demonstrations of human courage. It is the embodiment of amor fati, the love of one's fate, accepting what has happened and focusing one's energy on the path forward. The courage of daily discipline. As we've discussed, sometimes the greatest battle is against our own inertia, our own desire for comfort and ease. The courage to set boundaries. Saying no can be terrifying. We fear disappointing others, we fear conflict, we fear being disliked. But to consistently say yes when your inner voice is screaming no is a slow form of self-annihilation. The courage to protect your time, your energy, and your mental well-being is a fundamental act of self-respect. The courage to face discomfort, whether it's the discomfort of a difficult workout, the mental strain of deep work, or the emotional challenge of a tough conversation, growth only happens on the other side of discomfort. Courage is the willingness to step into that discomfort zone willingly and repeatedly. These everyday acts of courage may not win you medals or headlines, but they are what build an unshakable character. They are the daily deposits you make into your account of inner strength. Each time you choose the courageous path in a small moment, you are training your mind for the larger challenges that will inevitably come. You are proving to yourself, over and over, that you are not a slave to your fears or your impulses. You are the one who is in command. Section 6, The Symbiosis of Virtues, How Courage Supports Wisdom, Justice, and Temperance. We have established that Stoic courage is not an isolated attribute but one of 4 interconnected virtues. To truly master the art of fearless living, we must understand how these virtues work together, how they support and inform one another in a beautiful symbiosis. A life of flourishing is not achieved by perfecting one virtue in isolation, but by cultivating a harmonious balance of all 4. Thinking of them as separate is like trying to build a stable chair with only one leg. It is the integration of the 4 that provides a solid foundation for a virtuous life. Let's explore this dynamic interplay, seeing how courage acts as the engine that drives the other virtues into action, and how they, in turn, give courage its direction and form. Courage and wisdom. Wisdom, as the Stoics defined it, is the master virtue, the knowledge of what is good, bad, and indifferent. It is the compass that points us toward the right path. However, a compass is useless if you are too afraid to take the first step. Courage is the fuel for wisdom. You may know what the right thing to do is, but it is courage that allows you to actually do it, especially when it is unpopular, difficult, or dangerous. Imagine a doctor who, through their wisdom and experience, knows that a particular standard treatment is not working for a patient and that a newer, riskier procedure might be the only hope. Their wisdom identifies the path. But it takes immense courage to recommend this path to the patient's family, to face the potential for failure, and to take on that professional risk. Without courage, the doctor's wisdom remains a passive, unrealized insight. Conversely, wisdom gives courage its eyes. As we have discussed, courage without wisdom is mere recklessness. It is wisdom that allows us to assess a situation properly, to understand the real risks, to know when to stand and fight, and when a strategic retreat is the more virtuous option. Wisdom prevents courage from becoming a blind, self-destructive force. It ensures our bravery is applied effectively and for a noble purpose. Courage and justice. Justice is the virtue of fairness, kindness, and our duty to our fellow human beings. It is our social conscience. But like wisdom, justice can be a powerless ideal without the strength to enact it. Courage is the backbone of justice. It is the courage to stand up for someone who is being treated unfairly, even if it means drawing negative attention to yourself. It is the courage to speak truth to power, to challenge a corrupt system, or to defend the vulnerable. Think of a corporate whistleblower. They possess a sense of justice, they know that their company is harming the public. But that knowledge is inert without the courage to act upon it. It takes monumental courage to risk one's career, reputation, and financial security to bring the truth to light. Courage transforms a private sense of justice into a public act of virtue. On the other side of the coin, justice gives courage its heart. Courage for a purely selfish or malevolent end is not a virtue, it is a vice. The bank robber may be brave in a technical sense, but their actions are unjust, and therefore, not virtuous. Justice ensures that our courage serves the common good. It channels our strength toward protecting others, upholding fairness, and contributing to a better society. It is what makes a warrior a protector, rather than a predator. Courage and temperance. Temperance, or self-control, is the virtue of mastering our desires and fears. It is the ability to remain balanced and rational amidst the storms of emotion. The relationship between courage and temperance is particularly intimate. In many ways, courage is a specific application of temperance. It is temperance applied to the emotion of fear. When fear arises, the intemperate person is ruled by it, they either flee or freeze. The temperate and courageous person acknowledges the fear but does not allow it to dictate their actions. They maintain their self-control and act from a place of reason. Similarly, temperance gives courage its endurance. A single, explosive act of bravery can be impressive, but true Stoic courage is about sustained fortitude. It is the ability to endure a long illness with grace, to face years of hardship without losing hope, to work patiently toward a distant goal without giving in to distraction or despair. This long-term resilience is a product of temperance. It is the disciplined, steady application of courage over time. Temperance prevents courage from being a momentary flash of passion and transforms it into an enduring flame. The virtuous leader, an integrated example. To see this symbiosis in action, consider a great leader like Nelson Mandela. His 27 years in prison were an ultimate test of all four virtues. He required courage to endure the brutality of his imprisonment without breaking. He used wisdom to understand his enemies, to learn their language and their mindset, in order to one day negotiate with them. He knew that blind hatred would lead nowhere. He was driven by justice, an unwavering commitment to equality and freedom for his people. This was the purpose that fueled his endurance. And he demonstrated profound temperance, emerging from prison not with a heart full of vengeance, but with a disciplined spirit of reconciliation that allowed him to unite a divided nation. His courage was not reckless, it was guided by wisdom. It was not for personal gain, it was in service of justice. And it was not a momentary outburst, it was a testament to decades of temperate self-control. This is the Stoic ideal, a character so well integrated that the virtues work as one, creating a person of unshakable integrity and strength. Your own life is the training ground for this integration. Each day presents opportunities to practice. When you face a fear, ask, what is the wise course of action here? What does justice demand of me? And how can I act with temperance and self-control? By asking these questions, you begin to weave the virtues together, building not just courage, but a complete and resilient character. Conclusion: the daily practice of a Stoic warrior. We began our journey today by questioning the modern, cinematic myth of courage, the idea of a fearless hero, a person untouched by anxiety or doubt. We have traveled through the ancient wisdom of the Stoics to discover a far more profound, practical, and empowering truth: courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph of reason over it. It is not a gift bestowed upon a few, but a virtue that can be cultivated by all, through conscious effort and daily practice. We have redefined courage, seeing it not as reckless abandon, but as a principled component of a virtuous life, working in harmony with wisdom, justice, and temperance. We have learned to apply its dual blades through the dichotomy of control, possessing the serene courage to accept what we cannot change, and the active courage to take ownership of that which we can, our thoughts, our choices, and our actions. We have explored the counterintuitive power of premeditatio malorum, transforming negative visualization from a source of anxiety into a formidable tool for building resilience, a way to inoculate ourselves against the shocks of fate by facing them first in our minds. We have uncovered the quiet but unyielding strength of authenticity, the courage to live with an integrity that is grounded in our own values, not in the shifting sands of public opinion. And we have seen how this virtue is not reserved for epic stages, but is forged in the small, unseen battles of everyday life, in our apologies, our boundaries, our discipline, and our vulnerability. To live a Stoic life is to accept that the world will be chaotic. People will be unpredictable. Hardship will come. The Stoics were not optimists, they were realists. They did not seek an easy life, but sought to become strong enough to endure any life with grace and dignity. Courage, in this philosophy, is the engine of that endurance. It is the internal fire that we must tend to every day. So, where do you go from here? This knowledge is useless if it remains a collection of interesting ideas. Stoicism is a philosophy of action. The final and most important step is to begin your practice. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. Your training does not require a grand gesture. It begins with a single, conscious choice. Here is your call to action, your first exercise as a practicing Stoic warrior. In the next 24 hours, perform one small act of courage. It does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to be something anyone else even notices. Choose something that makes you feel that familiar flicker of fear or discomfort, and then, using the principles we have discussed, act anyway. Perhaps it is the courage to have that difficult conversation you have been avoiding. Perhaps it is the courage to sit in silence for 5 minutes, without distraction, facing your own thoughts. Perhaps it is the courage to apologize for a mistake. Perhaps it is the courage to say no to a request that would compromise your well-being. Or perhaps it is simply the courage to start a new project you have been putting off for fear of failure. Choose your act. Analyze it with wisdom. Ensure it is just. Execute it with temperance. And then, reflect on the experience. Notice that the fear you felt before the act was likely far worse than the reality of the act itself. Notice the quiet sense of strength and self-respect that follows. This is how the muscle is built. Not all at once, but through consistent, daily repetitions. You are not striving to become fearless. You are striving to become someone whose principles are stronger than their fears. The path of the Stoic is not an easy one, but it is a path that leads to an unshakable inner fortress, a tranquility that the storms of life cannot breach. It is the path to freedom, not freedom from hardship, but freedom from the tyranny of your own reactive emotions. Thank you for walking this path with us today. If this journey has resonated with you, if it has sparked a desire to begin your own training, let us know in the comments below. Share the one small act of courage you plan to undertake. Your story may inspire another to begin their own journey. For more explorations into the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Be Audio channel. The work of building a virtuous life is a lifelong pursuit, and we will be here to walk alongside you. Now go, and live with courage.